here to talk about, give an update on where we've been, where we're going on blue carbon. And the upshot is, we have a tremendous opportunity to do some very hard work, and we have a lot of work to do, but to really to start to earn carbon credits on our coastal restoration projects, sell those credits, get revenue, and reinvest that revenue back into the coastal program. That's what we're trying to do. That's the upshot. And the Water Institute is serving as a collaboration hub on this effort and pulling together a lot of different organizations, universities, and collaborators, because it's going to require a lot of different partners to make this happen. Before I go too far, what is blue carbon? It's carbon that is naturally sequestered by our coastal ecosystems. And our coastal ecosystems are really good at sequestering carbon. They're way better at sequestering carbon than a terrestrial forest, for example. And so, there's this dual benefit of sequestering carbon, helping to meet the governor's goals of getting to net zero by 2050. But then there's also this opportunity to provide additional revenue into the coastal program, particularly as we're looking toward, the out years and trying to figure out where additional revenue is going to come from. I mentioned there's a lot of work to be done, and that's because there is currently only one blue carbon project that has earned credits in the country, and that's off the coast of Virginia. And it's a relatively small a small project, less than 1,000 acres that are earning credits. And so, really we have an opportunity right now to be a leader in this space, and really to fill the data gaps and use our coastal master plan as the scientific basis for earning more credits and not leaving any opportunity or credits on the table. So as I mentioned, it's in the climate action plan for us to take on this work, and to evaluate whether we need to create a new carbon market, use existing markets, but we do definitely need to fill data gaps, and answer policy questions as well. The Water Institute has already begun this effort. Actually, 2 years ago when we were starting the Climate Action Plan, we knew we needed an update on our inventory of greenhouse gases, and this was a big kind of question mark of what is how much carbon is our coastal ecosystem, or our coastal ecosystem sequestering, and we didn't really have a great idea. We used EPA's kind of off-the-shelf, top-down methodology that wasn't specific to Louisiana, and since we have 40% of the nation, the lower 48's coastal wetlands, we have this opportunity to really hone in on the science. And so Beau's going to talk about kind of that work and some of the outcomes from there. But what is funding this work? So it had been made a priority, of Chairman Klein, Director Haas, and the CPRA leadership to implement that action in the Climate Action Plan, and to figure out if we can get additional revenue from this into the coastal program. And so $3 million has been dedicated in this upcoming annual plan to do that work, to figure out the policy questions and answer them, and so we're not leaving any credits on the table, and then also fill the science gaps that are needed as well. And so with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Jones to kind of elaborate on what we're planning to do.
Thanks, Harry, and thanks, Chairman Klein, members of the board. I'd be remiss to start without mentioning two things. The first is, although I don't have a plaque or a challenge coin, Chairman Klein, it's been a pleasure to work with you, to learn from you for many of the 15 years that you've been serving, and we've crossed paths in many different roles. And on behalf of myself and the Water Institute, thank you. Thank you for your service, and your work's not done, and I know you know that. The second thing is, I have the honor and the challenge of sitting here in the wake of losing a dear friend and a colleague in Justin Aaronworth, who is the president and CEO of the Water Institute of the Gulf. And I just want to again say thank you to this board, to Chip, to your team, to the community for lifting us up, for sending your condolences, offering support, and being there for us and his family. Justin also spent about 15 years committed to the Gulf and to the state, both from the federal side and through the Water Institute. And while he had an outsized impact in that time, we all here are bound together recognizing that what we are working on is much bigger than any of us will ever be able to complete, that these are existential and generational challenges. And we are required to leapfrog off the back and the shoulders of giants. So we know in Louisiana that if we don't keep moving forward, we will recede. And so that's what we're here today doing, is we're looking forward. We're going to build on the shoulders of the giants like Justin and all of those folks that have gone before us. And those of you who are moving on to other roles, we're going to continue the work. So Chip, several years ago, you asked the Water Institute, when we were designated as the Governor's Coastal Innovation and Collaboration Hub, to bring to you big projects, bring new ideas. Come from the outside and say, what are we not thinking of? Help us look around corners. This is something that in conjunction with Harry and his team, with university partners, we have been looking at for some time. And we're honored to pull it together. I'm going to run through some of these and just have them in here for the record, Chip, because I know it's getting late and close to lunch, so I won't belabor the point. There's a lot of talk in the news and in Louisiana around carbon capture, right? And I want to be clear that what we're talking about here is nature's own ability to capture carbon. There's carbon capture, utilization, and storage. It's a whole nother conversation. Coastal Louisiana marshes, as Harry said, do a tremendous job. How good of a job? For every 1 acre of Louisiana marshes, the estimates are that it sequesters 80 times the carbon of an acre of terrestrial forest. Now, note that and recognize that the entire voluntary carbon market that exists internationally is hinged almost entirely on forest, right? So wetlands make up about 3% of habitats around the world, and they sequester over 30% of the carbon. So the question that we're asking here today is, and we'll be asking over the next several years, is not, is not just about a market. It's about, are we adequately quantifying and calculating and understanding, whether there's a market or not, the true value of coastal Louisiana and the projects that this board and this agency lead. And Harry said that the state of Louisiana has the opportunity to be a leader, but I want to be very clear that this is not starting today with the Water Institute. This is not starting today with the university partners that we have on this or with this board. The state of Louisiana, since at least 2005, has been leading in this effort. And because of the state of Louisiana, both the legislature, the CPRA board, and the agency, and the steps that have been taken, the state of Louisiana stands alone in the United States and possibly internationally with the opportunity to capitalize on voluntary carbon markets and to better quantify and understand blue carbon and its role. So I'm not going to belabor each one of these, but back around 2008, 2010, there was a big effort to try and understand, in the wake of a potential cap and trade market, were there opportunities to create a voluntary carbon market? And CPRA, along with CH2M Hill at the time, put through a methodology with one of the international standards bodies called VM24. So right now, projects in Louisiana could be verified and generate carbon credits. There's a couple problems to it. Those markets are extremely conservative because of lack of data, because of data gaps that exist. Also, the entire market is built on a project-by-project basis, right? Think about it, stocks, right? An individual stock. So why there's a difference between a marsh creation blue carbon project and a terrestrial forest is we have little things called hurricanes. We have subsidence and relative sea level rise, so there's a lot more risk. And if your entire project and your entire crediting mechanism is based on that single polygon of that project, there's a lot of risk there. What we have with the Coastal Master Plan and the 2023 Coastal Master Plan and all those predating it is we've got a mutual fund, right? There are a series of projects that are connected across hydrologic basins, across habitat types. And so what we're looking to, with the leadership of the governor's office, is to try and understand how you can maximize the market or policy opportunities that exist on the backs of the Coastal Master Plan. It's a scientific question, a series of scientific questions. It's a policy question, and we're happy to dive into it. Voluntary carbon markets in 2021 generated about $2 billion transactions, and this is with actually not even a fully finished project in the United States. There's not a single one in the United States today on blue carbon. But we're talking a little bit about a market here, but I want to be very clear that from this board's perspective, the opportunity is not just that one day there'll be a carbon coin that you'll be able to sell and generate direct revenue to the coastal program. Right? Harry laid out the climate action plan, action 15.3 specifically, and the modeling pathway. Understanding what the carbon drawdown potential and realities of coastal Louisiana are really critical for the state of Louisiana to understand what its overall emissions portfolio is. The governor has set out a net zero goal by 2050. It is critical to understand what the coastal Louisiana is doing to that. But even aside from those two questions, markets and net zero goals, we know that the co-benefits and the multi-benefits of the Coastal Master Plan are critical to communicating its relevance and communicating it to the community and to the federal government to seek investment and to prioritize this work. The federal government, the international market, is looking very heavily at what the carbon balance is, what the carbon impacts are of activities. And so fully understanding that for the coastal program is critical. And so it's not just about a market that we're looking at it. Again, Chip, I mentioned that the governor designated us as the Coastal Innovation and Collaboration Hub, and one of the charges was to bring big ideas, and one of the charges was to not do it alone. This is going to be a big tent effort. This is not just going to be the Water Institute. There are university partners that have been working on this for decades. There are private sector partners that are internationally recognized in leadership of this. There are law firms up and down the line. So this is going to be a big tent effort to try and coalesce the best in thought and research and policy for the benefit of the state of Louisiana. Harry mentioned some of the beginning work. This is one of the last two slides. Harry mentioned some of the existing work that's been going on. We've been looking for a couple years now at a high-level overview, a back in the napkin, so to say, of the coastal program, not towards a market, but what are the carbon impacts. And it is pretty clear from this research that I'm not going to go into the detail of this. Number one, because I'm not a scientist, I'm only science adjacent. But number two, in the interest of time. But the long and short of it is that it is apparent that over time and also thanks to the investments of the Coastal Master Plan, the coastal Louisiana will be a net sink over time. So this is a little bit the final slide here on how we're going to be going through this. Number one is we're going to be looking at the policy and their accreditation frameworks. What needs to exist both in state policy and state law, and in connection with the federal and international markets to be able to generate carbon credits or to be able to explore that in Louisiana. But also, one of the big issues is that the assumption is that there's a lot of carbon being left on the table. Right now, under the existing methodologies that exist on the international market, if an acre of Louisiana marsh is inundated or becomes open water, the assumption is that 100% of the carbon goes back into the atmosphere. Right, 100% goes back into the atmosphere, not accounting for subaquatic vegetation, or submerged aquatic vegetation, not accounting for the soil carbon, not accounting for the lateral flux of carbon that goes from the marshes and out into other places. So one of the things that we're going to be looking at is the fate of carbon. What happens as our coastal habitats do what they do, which is they are dynamic and they change and they move. Rather than thinking about this in a specific polygon and a specific molecule of carbon in one place, how can we think about the net ecosystem carbon benefit of coastal Louisiana? Also looking at methane, what the flux is between methane and carbon, and trying to understand the fate of carbon from being pulled down in the atmosphere all the way into deep storage in the Gulf. So that is what we're excited to work on with the governor's office, with the staff at CPRA, many of the university and private sector partners, and look forward to briefing the board on it in the future.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jones. This agenda item and the next agenda item are two initiatives that I think are of utmost importance that the next administration, whoever the new governor is, needs to make a priority. And so, Harry, I thought your opening comments on why we're looking at this concept were spot on, and Beaux, your overview was great. But there's going to be a new governor that's sworn in January. And a lot of you in the private sector are going to be in that new governor's ear. You're going to be talking to the new chairman. You're going to be talking to staff. And this is an issue that you need to talk to the new governor about to ensure that the state is going to pursue this over the next 4 to 8 years, to develop the science, to develop the legal and policy piece, to ensure that we're setting up this program in a way that is removing carbon out of the atmosphere, that is generating revenue to the coastal program, because 2032, you know what happens. And so this is a huge component of the coastal program's plan on how you're going to generate additional revenue to supplant the revenue that we're going to be losing from BP. And so this is just I couldn't agree with you said more, Beaux, is that, you know, this isn't just something we're starting today. This has been taking place for a while, but I think the real meat of the work and actually setting up the framework is really in front of us.